And the picks are in for the Houston Astros. The first two rounds have come to a close and they go into the next day, rounds 3 through 10, I believe. Drew Gilbert was the first pick, the 28th pick for the Houston Astros. And these are their first three picks in the first two rounds in over two seasons. So it's a great thing to see. They picked great with Jacob Melton out of Oregon State at pick 64 and Andrew Taylor, a really tall Central Michigan pitcher who broke his own school record this year at pick number 80. So thank you for tuning in. Let's talk about these draft picks and see what we have to look forward to. And I'll explain a little bit about what it means to have a certain grade and what a major league player grade looks like for these draft picks.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Astros, your daily Astros podcast. Here are your hosts, Eric the Man Heisman and Brett Htown Wheelhouse Chansey.
We are Locked On Houston Astros. We are your daily Astros podcast. I'm Htown Wheelhouse. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Htown Wheelhouse. You can find me at Stros411 on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Always positive, always Stros. You can find the show at Locked On Astros on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And just know that this show today is brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online is today's host. BetOnline.net has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. So let's talk about these two kids. You have Jacob Melton, you have Andrew Taylor. But first, Jacob Melton with the 64th pick. This kid has grades. You have hit, power, run, arm, and fielding in an overall grade. The grading scale is a 2 to 80 grading scale. And so before we get into what his grade is, let me kind of give you a background of where the grading scale came from. And I got this from fangraphs.com. It's a great website. The background of this is it was invented by Branch Rickey. Branch Rickey was the Brooklyn Dodgers owner who signed Jackie Robinson and did a lot of things for baseball. They say, and whether he intended it or not, it mirrors various scientific scales. So 50 is major league average. So if a player has a 50 rating, that means they project that player to become a major league player. Then each 10-point increment represents a standard deviation, better or worse than average. So in a normal distribution, 3 standard deviations in either direction should include 99.7% of your sample. So that's why the scale is 20 to 80 rather than 0 to 100. With that said, the distribution of tools isn't a normal curve for every tool, but is somewhere close to that for most. So here's the basis for 5-tool prospects. Okay. And these are the only couple things I'm going to add in there because I want you to understand what this is. You've probably heard the term 5-tool players or 5-tool prospects. While it's an overused and misunderstood term, they're referring to the 20 to 80 scouting scale. The 5 tools for position players are 1, hitting, power, running, fielding, and throwing. The general use of the 5-tool term is when all 5 tools are at least average and or above average, kind of like a Bo Jackson, kind of like what Andrew Jones had at 19 breaking into the league. His son was the second overall pick, Drew Jones. 5-tool players are very rare. 5-tool players are difficult to find. So what you do, it's funny. I feel like I'm quoting the movie Moneyball. You hope a kid has 1 or 2 and you develop a third one. Remember when they're talking to Billy Beane in the movie when he's a high school player and the Mets are trying to sign him. And he says, but we feel like your son has all 5 tools. And so that's what we're looking at. So I'm going to give you these grades. Jacob Melton, his grades are across the board. Unbelievable. Jacob Melton has an advanced approach to the plate. He has a good amount of power to his pull side. In 2022, he tapped into that power. Many thought that he probably had better than average power because they see higher potential in what he has. Plus, he is a speed kid and he can steal bases. And as well, he can play 3 outfield spots. He can also man first base very admirably, most scouts have said. Many had him a back end of the first round. So the fact that this kid fell to the Astros at pick 64 is almost like Christmas in July. That's right. I said Christmas in July. That's what this is like. These are his scouting grades. Hit, he's rated at a 50. Power, 50. Running, 60. Arm, 55. Fielding, 55. Overall grade, 50. At Oregon State, he hit 404 over 32 games in 2021, and he continued to swing the bat well in 2022 while becoming an everyday center fielder. So when I look at this scale right here, when you have a 50 grade, you're typically, if you're a pitcher, you have an average fastball velocity of 90 to 91. If you're a hitter, you have a 260 average. If you are, okay, for homers, you would have 15 to 18. Right-handed hitters to first base, you would have a sprint speed of 4.30. Left-handed hitters, 4.20. And 60-yard run, 6.9 to 7. Now, if you have a guy that is, his tool is, he's an 80 or he's a plus guy, you're looking at 97 to 95 on velo, 290 to 320 in the big leagues, 30 to 40 plus home runs, a run to first for right-handed, 4 to 4.15, and left-handed 3.9 to 4.5, and a 6-yard run from 6.3 to 6.6. I don't want to get into the weeds of all the variables and all the things there, but that's where Jacob Melton is. And so the reason why I say that is because the last show I talked about Drew Gilbert and I didn't give you his grades. My apologies. And so his grades for their first overall pick, to go back the last show. If you haven't watched it, watch it with Lindsey Crosby. Drew Gilbert, their first pick, their 28th pick, hit is 55, power 45, run 55, arm 60, fielding 55, overall 50. So both Drew Gilbert and Jacob Melton are projected to be major league outfielders. And these guys coming out of college probably have a quicker road to the big leagues than a high school prospect would. So that's really good. So the Astros go out, and it's also been reported that shortly after the draft, shortly after the pick, that the Astros signed Drew Gilbert. The terms were undisclosed, but his agent said in this day and time, this doesn't happen. That means that the Astros offered him a good amount of money. Now, what you hope is that Drew Gilbert, now when you listen to this, the terms may have come out. While I'm recording this, I haven't heard them. But this is your hope when you're going into a draft. If you get a guy under slot, under where he's slotted or over slot, you don't want to give all the money to your first pick. You want more money to distribute the money throughout your system and your other picks. Because if you don't do that, then you're not going to be able to pay the guys that you draft later on in the draft when it comes to doing that. So the Houston Astros, they have literally, I mean, if you go through and you look at their picks. I mean, they have a draft pick obviously in every round going after this, but the Houston Astros they can pay up to 150,000 up to, I believe, the 20th round. It is from 11 to 20. It's a guaranteed 150,000. So you want to distribute that money and have the money to be able to give to those kids when you get further down. So we won't know until it's reported. I'll move on. Andrew Taylor, right-handed pitcher out of Central Michigan. He's 20 years old. He was born in 2001. He's a right-hander, 6'5". 6'5", 190 pounds. Wow. So here are his scouting grades, and they grade the pitchers on their pitches. not it's not their bat and all that, obviously. I'm preaching to the choir. You guys are smart fans, Locked on Astros listeners. Y'all do a great job. His fastball is rated at a 55, curveball 50, slider 50, changeup 55, control 50, overall 45. Now, he's 5 points under major league average. From what I'm understanding and what I'm hearing from scouts is that his breaking pitch is improved, but it's not where they think it needs to be for major league level stuff. But with the Astros pitching development, that doesn't seem to be a problem. I mean, talking to Pete Solomon, talking to Joe Recker, to Jonathan Sprinkle, to Jimmy Endersby, to Sean Dubin, to Brett Canine, to Brandon Belak, all these pitchers that I've interviewed in the Astros farm system, they all say the same thing. They give you a ton of information and they actually help you to know what it is you need to do to pitch well, to get your spin rate up. So let me give you a little background on Taylor. He was spectacular in his first full season in 2021 for college. He was Mid-American Pitcher, Conference Pitcher of the Year, and Consensus All-American honors while setting a Central Michigan record of 125 strikeouts. He broke his own mark with 126 this spring. So this year he broke his own record, though he also left starts in April and May with elbow tightness. He didn't miss a turn in the rotation. However, he looked good in the NCAA regional start against Florida. Florida was a solid team. Could become the first Chippewas pitcher to go in the top 4 rounds since Kevin Tepani in 1986. Well, guess what, folks? He did. He became the 80th overall pick. So obviously these reports were written before the draft. His fastball sits at 90, tops out at 94, but it's an analytics darling with his high spin rates and carry. Add in the extension he creates with his skinny 6'5" frame, and hitters struggle to get good swings against his heater and repeatedly get beat with it up in the zone. So up in the zone, we know a lot of times Brent Strom talked about up and down rather than side to side. We've got guys now working on their side to side, sweeping curveballs, sweeping sliders. He uses the fastball roughly 80% of the time, and his most reliable secondary pitch is a solid 78 to 82 mile an hour changeup with fade in depth. Again, he improved on his breaking balls, soft 70s downer curveball, in a nascent 78 to 83 mile per hour slider. There's they're no more than average offerings, so that's where he's lacking. But he's young; he's 20 years old. You got time to develop this kid. Taylor keeps his long limbs in sync, allowing him to repeat his delivery and provide strikes. This is something I've talked about with the Noli Paredes. This is something I've talked about with the Astros pitchers that struggle. Watch Noli Paredes pitch next time he pitches. And he may have cleaned it up a little bit, but because he has such a herky-jerky motion and he seems to be almost doing something different every time he pitches, his plant foot will not be in sync. His release point will not be the same. This kid has a smooth, fluid motion, and at 6'5", a tall pitcher, you need to be in sync. You need to have a strong lower half. One of the criticisms I have about Forrest Whitley is I wonder how much work has this kid done with his legs. He still looks lanky. He still looks bare. He still looks thin below the waist. And all your power, whether you're pitching or hitting, comes from the feet up. And we know that. Go back to legends like Roy Oswalt, Shane Reynolds, Mike Scott, Nolan Ryan, J.R. Richard, Joe Niekro. I mean, all these guys, Bob Nepper, all these Astros pitching legends, Juan Rodriguez, Andre Scrubs Wagon, all that stuff. I mean, these guys need to have that power. And it's if he's in sync and he's 6'5" and 190, he's probably pretty solid. Okay. While there are some questions about his health, there's also some thought that he has more upside remaining if a pro club will help him increase his strength and feel for spinning the ball. Do you hear that? The scout said if he can get with somebody who helps him get a feel for spinning the ball, I wonder what club would do that. Probably the Houston Astros. So there you go. That rounds out the first 2 rounds of the Houston Astros MLB draft. Now, I don't plan on doing a show for every single pick, but what I will do, I will recap day two, picks 3 through 10, and try to do a succinct 20 to 25-minute show if I can do it all. Or I may break it up 3 through 6, 7 through 10, and do a couple mini shows. Doing these shows so that you, the listener, now if you're on YouTube, you're seeing them individually. If you're listening to audio, this is a second part of this show. And so this is going to wrap up the episode. If you're on audio, thank you for listening. These two picks of the second round were brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is your place for all your sports betting and sports wagering needs. They have the latest odds, the latest props, the latest lines that you can't get anywhere else. I mean, BetOnline has everything: home run derby, playoffs, NFL, whatever it is you want, MMA, boxing, golf. Go there, head to the website today, use your mobile device, and learn more about the trends in action. You can still vote on Rookie of the Year. If you still think that Jordan Alvarez is going to be MVP, go vote on that. Go vote on, go vote. Go see what the odds are for Jordan Alvarez having 58 home runs or 50 home runs. There's so many options you have. And let me tell you, betonline.net has been good to me. I've seen some cool things. I've even benefited from it a little bit. So check it out. Bet online, where the game starts. I'm Htown Wheelhouse. This is Locked On Astros. Remember, we are your team every day. And as always, like, subscribe, and know that we are always positive, always Stros. Let's go. Bury me in the H.